Chapter 10. Dimwood Forest. Poppy searched desperately for a place to hide. Glitter Creek ran behind. Before her stood Dimwood Forest. There was little choice. She plunged among the shadowy tree trunks and began running wildly, her only desire to put as much distance between herself and Mr. Ocox's tree as possible. It did not take long before an exhausted Poppy had to stop. Her sides ached. She was hot and cold all at once. Her heart felt as though it would break out through her ribs. Gasping for breath, she crept beneath a leaf, then peered about to see where she had come. It was as if the sun had been stolen. Only thin ribbons of light seeped down through the green and milky air syrupy with the scent of pine, huckleberry, and juniper. Think about those words. Those are all trees. From the rolling emerald carpeted earth, fingers of lacy ferns curled up, above which a massive fir and pine tree stood, pillar-like, to support an invisible sky. Think about this. Why is the sky invisible to her? Because she's inside the forest. Hovering over everything was a silence as deep as the trees were tall. Poppy gazed at it in awe. She was not sure what she'd thought Dimwood Forest would be like. She knew only that she'd never imagined it so vast, so dense, so dark. The sight made her feel immensely isolated and small. Feeling small made her part of all she saw. Being part of it made her feel immense. It was so terribly confusing. The silence was broken by the sound of a sharp tapping. Poppy ducked, but nothing happened. From another direction came a whelp, a screech. Poppy shivered. Closer still was the smothered scurry of something slithery and unseen. A tree groaned, a branch snapped. There was the passing scamper of little feet. Poppy's heart raced just as fast. She could only guess what animals were making such sounds. Automatically, she thought of porcupines, recalling vividly the frightening picture her father had shown the family. Had not Mr. Ocox given a special warning about a particularly bloodthirsty porcupine he'd seen recently in the forest? He had. Poppy grew even more tense. She had to find a place to regain her composure. Anxiously, she gazed about for a safe place to rest. What she found was a massive boulder, its top half matted with dark moss, its lower part embedded in earth. Beneath it was hollow. Poppy bounded over to the rock. Close up, the hollow proved to be more like a cave, utterly dark and deep at the end. What was there? She edged forward, sniffing the air. She froze. A distinct animal smell alarmed all her senses. Unable to identify what it might be, she listened intently, ears flicking this way and that. Seeing and hearing nothing, she crept slowly forward until she was completely inside the cave. Was anything there? Only when she was quiet. Only when she was quite certain nothing was there, she did begin to clean herself. Now, third graders, if you look and if you had a book, you'd be able to see we have that big space again. That's because we're changing the perspective. Here we were hearing from Poppy. Here now we're going to go to Mr. Ocox. Mr. Ocox, from a hiding place on the far side of Dimwood Forest, watched the barn at Newhouse intently. His nervous talons clenched and unclenched the branch upon which he was perched. At first he tried to deny the fear he felt inside of him, but it was growing too fast. It could not be denied that he, Ocox, the great horned owl, should feel fear made him livid. It was for other birds, others to fear fearful, not him. "It's unfair," he hissed. "Unnatural." Suddenly, hearing his own outburst, he looked about in alarm, anxious that some other creature might see and hear him. No matter what, his fearfulness must never be known. He spread his wings and glided silently away from Newhouse. In a temper, he recalled the mouse he had seen in Glitter Creek. Perhaps the body had been tossed up on the bank. He was upset enough to eat anything, even if it was already dead. When he reached the creek, he began to fly upstream, moving low over the water. Hey, look at now we have a big pause or a big break in the sentence structure again because we're going back to Poppy. Poppy paused in her fur cleaning now and again to gaze out at the forest. It should not have been called Dimwood, she told herself, but Darkwood. She kept asking herself how she ever thought she'd find her way through such a fearsome place. The likelihood of her survival was growing slimmer moment by moment. And though at the moment she felt relatively safe, she worried that she had not gotten far enough away from Mr. Ocox's watching tree. But which way should she go? She had no idea where she was. She was lost and she knew it. She recalled the vow she'd made on Baynock Hill, never to leave home again. She considered going back. She wanted to. But then she thought about what would happen if she did return without nothing to report to Lungwort about Mr. Ocox. Life would be miserable. Poppy sighed. It was so hard to be courageous, but so hard to be a coward. Going forward or back seemed equally awful. So much easier to do nothing. But if she did nothing, she would surely perish. What was she to do? Trying to stay calm, she reminded herself that by pressing on, at least she had the chance to make a difference for her family. Now, if she only knew which direction led her to Newhouse. Mr. Ocox concluded that the mouse he had seen in the water was gone, washed away. At least there was no evidence of its existence, dead or alive. In any case, he was still so upset by what he had seen at Newhouse that he found it hard to concentrate on searching. His head ached. All he could think about was getting some sleep. He would go home. He flew deep into Dimwood Forest, moving in a northerly direction. Poppy peered nervously out from beneath the boulder. If this is midday, she said to herself, I'd hate to be in the forest at night. She considered staying and sleeping for a while, but the distinct smell of the other animal made her too nervous. It certainly seemed not to be about. But what if it came back while she was slept? Too risky. If she wanted to sleep, and she did, she'd have to find a better place. Checking in all directions, paying particular attention to the angle of the slanting rays of sunlight, and knowing that moss grew on the north side of trees, Poppy made her mind that she could make a rough determination as which way was east and the direction which she had come. As she recalled the lay of the land, Newhouse was to the north. She would go north, then hoping for the best. Mr. Ocox came to rest on a gray, lifeless tree, a snag. That was his nest. With its top broken off, the snag rose twice as high as the blackberry bush from the ground. A high hole served as its entrance to its hollowness. For a while, the owl sat at the edge of his nest and stared moodily before him, thinking only about what he had seen at Newhouse. Just to think about it made him tense. He felt he was in grave danger. The question was, what kind of danger? Was he about to lose his food? Would he have to fight? If he did, he knew he might be defeated. If he was defeated, would he have to move to another territory? Was there anything he could do about the situation? It was all so painful to contemplate. Fretful, the owl scanned his neighborhood, paying attention to a very large hollow log on the ground not far from his snag. Its ancient thick bark was rust-colored and crusted with yellow fungus that looked like stubby angel wings. A clutch of pale mushrooms grew from the rotting soil around it. Just the thought of the creature who had recently come to live in that log made Mr. Ocox angry. There's that. It was as if his whole world were ganging up on him. Too tired to think about that now, Mr. Ocox dropped down into his nest, feeling safe there. He did not take long before falling asleep to a restless sleep. Poppy made her way northward through the forest in short runs. She could only hope she'd chosen the right direction. Sometimes she paused to eat, but felt too insecure to stop for long. Her toes ached with tension. An hour later, Poppy stopped to nibble on some pine seeds. As she ate, she noticed a huge log, partly embedded in the earth, covered with yellow fungus. It seemed very old, and it appeared to be hollow. Poppy considered it. If the log was unoccupied, it might be a perfect place for her to rest with safety. Then she noticed the remains of a large gray tree. Its top was gone, and there was a hole in its side. It might be safer than the log, but after studying it, Poppy decided the hole was too high for her to climb to. The log would be better. Weary, she crept forward. The closer she came to the log, the stronger grew a scent unfamiliar to her. She sensed trouble. She was still sniffing when she heard the sound of a twig snapping behind her. She spun about and gasped. A red fox, long, bushy tail swooshing back and forth, was trotting in her direction, its sharp nose to the ground. Poppy understood immediately. The fox was following her scent. Turning back, Poppy took a flying leap that landed her right at the log's open end. The fox, hearing, then seeing her, barked sharply and closed in, its lips drawn back with its sharp teeth. Poppy stood trembling before the log. Every instinct in her body warned her not to enter. When she looked back, however, the fox was almost upon her. There was no time to waste. She dived into the log. The fox stuck its nose in after her, its barking booming about like a cannon. Trying to get away, she moved deeper into the musky dark. Suddenly she stopped. At the far end of the log, she heard the distinct sound of heavy breathing. It was exactly what she had feared. Another creature was already in the log. Hastily, she turned towards the log opening. She never reached it. The fox's lolling red tongue and sharp teeth barricaded the way. Poppy stared back into the log's darkness. The breathing was rattling. It was drawing nearer. She was trapped.